The views and opinions of the guests of Veterans Archives do not reflect the views and opinions of Veterans Archives, its subsidiaries, or its partners. Hello and welcome to Veterans Archives. This is a podcast where you can learn about our military history in the words and voices of the men and women who lived and created it. I'm your host, Bill Krieger, and let's listen to our next story. Today is Thursday, February 29th, 2024, and we are talking with Jenna Carlton, who is a U.S. Navy veteran. So Jenna, we're going to start out super simple. When and where were you born?
I was born in Iron Mountain, Michigan, in September 8th, 1994.
Oh, awesome. So from talking with you beforehand, right, I know that you're from Wisconsin as well, so I guess we'll get into all of that. But what was it like growing up, Jenna, and how long did you live in Iron Mountain? Because I'm, from Michigan myself, and that's way up there. You can't even use the hand to show where you're at.
Nope. Yep. So Wisconsin is right on the border of the UP, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and the town I grew up in was really small. I think there was 2,000 population, so the closest hospital was across the bridge in Iron Mountain. So I never lived there, but that's where I was born, and all my family, they were Upers, so all from the UP.
Okay. So Wisconsin, Upper Peninsula, kind of the same. I think people from Wisconsin think they should own the Upper Peninsula. Is that how that...
Yeah,
is that how that goes?
Yeah, there's an interesting history behind it. I don't remember, but if you ever have time, look it up because it should be a part of Wisconsin. It touches Wisconsin. It doesn't even touch Lower Michigan.
Right. Probably won in some war or something.
Yeah,
right?
something with Canada.
Yeah. So born in Michigan, lived in Wisconsin. What was it like being a kid in Wisconsin?
It was great because it's such a rural area. We spent a lot of time outdoors, and we get a lot of snow in the winter. So I grew up snowmobiling, skiing. In gym class, we would go snowshoeing, sledding. It was a lot of fun. And I grew up an only child, but there was a lot of kids in my neighborhood, and we would always be riding our bikes or jumping on my trampoline. My family, we went camping a lot. We did a lot of stuff, and it was a lot of outdoor stuff.
It sounds like it. So tell me a little bit about your parents then. What were they like? What were their names? Or what are their names because they're still around?
Yes. So my mom's name is Zona, and my dad's name is Mike, and they met at their 40th class reunion. And they got married 2 months later in Las Vegas.
So you were a late in life baby.
Yeah. They were 38 when they met, and they weren't wasting any time. They got married and started trying for a baby, and I eventually came 2 years later.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. So were either one? I don't want to dig into your family too much. Had either one of them been married before? I mean,
yeah, my dad was married in his 20s for about 9 months, and my mom was never married. I know she had few longer relationships, but no. And as you're getting up there, especially my mom, she thought maybe kids weren't in the cards for her. But so when she met my dad, they were just love at first sight.
Oh, that's awesome. And so they got married. Gosh, I'm trying to wrap my head around having kids because I had all my kids fairly early in life, and so that's a big change, especially if you've been around for a while. So what did your parents do for a living?
My mom was a teacher, and she still substitute teaches, and my dad worked at a paper mill. So he worked shift work a lot, so I didn't see him growing up. We would do our trips together, but a lot of times it was just me and my mom because he worked at night or was sleeping during the day. Right.
And so what grades did your mom teach?
She taught kindergarten. They put her all over, but kindergarten, first grade, and she was also an art teacher. So that was a lot of fun. And then I went through a school that was kindergarten through 12th grade, all in one school. So everyone knew me as a teacher's daughter, and you get a lot of pressure on you to be kind of well-behaved because your mom's right there. Your teachers are in the teacher lounge with your mom. They can go and tell on you.
Yeah, how was that for you?
Yeah, I felt like I had a lot of pressure on me to stay in line, and that was easy until I got to about 10th grade.
Right, right. Because things change when you get older as a approaching, your teen years. So yeah, how did that work out for you? I mean, I can imagine it's got to be similar to having a parent who's a minister or a parent who's a cop, right? A parent who's a teacher. That's got to be rough.
Yes, and especially in a small town where everyone knows everything. And, when I was 16, I started partying, I started drinking, I started breaking all the rules and sneaking out. So me and my mom clashed a lot. I put her through hell.
Yep, that's pretty standard. Did she say something like, gosh, I hope you have kids like you when you get older?
All the time.
You get that curse, did you?
She can't wait, especially now that I have girls. She's like, you're going to get payback.
Right. Well, is she going to be one of the kind of grandparents that's going to spoil the grandchildren?
She does spoil them. She does, but she's also very teacher-minded, so she's always teaching them, and she'll discipline them, too. She's got no problem, so I appreciate that.
Well, that's perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. So it sounds like you had even though your mom was a teacher, you had a pretty standard childhood and school career. What kinds of things did you like in school?
I really liked art. That was one of my things, and I loved writing. Mm-hmm. And that's something I've carried with me forever. I still love writing. And I loved doing theater. I loved sports. I played basketball, track. I did some volleyball. I did music, anything you could get into because I was an only child. My mom just wanted to keep me busy. So dance class, piano lessons, catechism, you name it. I was in everything.
So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Is your husband an only child as well?
No, he's got what, 3 brothers and 2 sisters.
That must be a total culture shock for you then.
It is because I don't get the competitiveness a lot.
Because you didn't have to, right? There was no one to compete with in your house.
Right. There wasn't, I would compete with my friends and that, and then kind of just the dynamic with siblings and parents, and a lot of his are step and half siblings. So it's like really interesting, but I think I got it figured out now.
Well, that's good. That's good. So as you're going through high school, no spoiler alert here, you joined the Navy at some point. When did you decide that was going to be what you wanted to do?
I was, like I mentioned, I was really into going out with friends, and I was really centered around doing whatever friends, because as an only child, you really want to be accepted by friends, and they hold a lot more weight for you. So I was very influenced by the wrong crowds, and I became one of the wrong crowds and bad influences. And I was just, I was really good at track, so I could have went to school or to college to run track, but I hated it because I put way too much pressure on myself, again, to be the best. So I was starting to think of other options, and I went and stayed with my uncle down in Florida, and he was in the Navy, and he's like, Jenna, join the Navy. You're going to see the world. It's going to be great. And that kind of stuck with me. So a year later, when I was drunk at a party, my friend was like, I'm joining the Navy. And I said, tell your recruiter to call me because I'm going to join with you. And like any recruiter, I got a call the next day. Oh,
yeah. So that was it. There was like no big, deep thought process to it. Hey, I'm drunk. I'm going to join the Navy.
I swear I don't really drink anymore, but it has shaped my life so much.
Oh, yeah. I can only imagine. So being a rebellious teenager, is there anything you care to share? Like something you got away with that you're sort of like proud and surprised that you got away with it, that you didn't get caught?
Oh man, we were bad. We would always be out in the woods, and sometimes the county would leave out equipment like giant, not bulldozers, but stuff to clear the trails with. And they would leave the keys in them under the seat.
This sounds like their fault.
I know. And so we would be out there partying, and then, we would just drive back in these trails. I mean, they would go for miles and miles, truck trails. And we stumbled upon one, and we're like, let's go driving it. And we were just out in the woods knocking down trees, and it was so much fun, but again, so dangerous and kind of embarrassing that we did that.
So if your kids did that today, or when they're that age, you'd probably get a little upset then.
Right. And I think kids can't get away with stuff like that because there were cameras everywhere now, and they track things by GPS. There's no way.
Right. Which is good in a way, but I think it's kind of sad in a way because, I mean, the stuff we did when we were kids, some of it was probably dangerous, but no one got hurt. Most of the time. Yeah, I can think of a couple times where people got hurt. That was not a good thing, but yeah, I mean, it happens. But we didn't have, at that time, we didn't really have the internet or social media or any of that stuff. No one videoed anything on a phone. Right. I mean, our phones were connected to our houses and they had super long cords, at least when I was a kid.
Yeah, there was no evidence, and now kids get away. Facebook was just becoming really popular, and some kids would post stuff and get in trouble. I remember because it was the time where you would post anything. Now I think people are smarter.
Oh yeah, and I hope they are. I mean, that's one of the cautions that I told all of my kids is whatever electronic thing you post or send, it's forever. Mm-hmm. You might delete it, but somebody else might not. So just be careful about what you're doing with your digital media. Yeah. So it sounds like high school was a pretty good time. Now, I grew up in the city, so we didn't steal earth movers and knock trees down. That sounds like a lot of fun to me. Maybe I'll head to Wisconsin this weekend and see what happens. But so you had a few drinks at a party. This recruiter calls you. What happens?
I met him and just started talking about jobs. I wanted to do Intel really bad. Uh-huh. And so I signed up for a 6-year contract. It was the summer after I graduated high school. And I decided to go to a country music festival. It's called Hodag in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. And everyone's having fun. I was out with my friend's grandparents and we were, enjoying country music. And then on the way home, I started walking and somebody offered me a drink. And so I was walking back to my campsite. We were all camping there as well. And I was walking back to my campsite with a drink and I walked right into a police officer. Oops. Yes, another way alcohol has shaped my life. And he was, of course, an ex-Air Force. He was an Air Force veteran. And I was telling him, I'm about to leave in 2 weeks. Please, don't write me this ticket. This is really going to mess everything up for me. And he was one of those hard asses. And he's like, I don't want someone like you in my military.
Someone that walks around with a drink.
Right. And I was clearly drunk. Right. But I was 18. I was about to leave for the military. I was just trying to have the best summer ever. Yeah. So I got in trouble and I ended up having to pay, a ticket. It wasn't that big of a deal, but I had to let my recruiter know for some reason, and he had to let someone else know, and they said, all right, you're not going to be Intel anymore. And he said, but I do have another job, which is aerographer's mate, which is weather. And I was like, I could do that. Yeah.
You could be a weather lady, right?
Exactly. And that's, it's not like I got busted down to be an undesignated seaman having to clean the ship and paint all the time. So it worked out. Right.
And for anyone looking to join the Navy today, if they offer you something like undesignated seaman, because that sounds really cool and it's only a 2-year enlistment, don't do it.
No.
Absolutely not. Unless you like chipping and painting and that sort of thing. And it's got to be done. But I met a lot of people who were not very happy once they got to the fleet because of that.
Yes. Yeah. They were told they could go in and choose any rate they wanted. And really, if you're on a carrier and you're undesignated, your only real option is probably going to be a OS, operations specialist. That's what most of them end up doing. So. Yeah,
exactly. So you're off to weather school then, but first basic training, right?
Yep. I went to boot camp. It was really easy for me. Since I had drank my whole summer away, when I checked into boot camp, I was marked as vitamin D deficient, and I had early onset osteoporosis. That's how bad I was.
Well, okay, Jenna, so I'm like, okay, there's partying, and then there is partying to the point where you damage your bones and you're not even 20 yet. That's crazy.
There's a reason I don't drink anymore. It was, and I don't think my parents realized, how bad of a problem it was, and it kind of continued throughout. I thought Navy's going to shape me up, people there, they care about their health. They care about fitness. I'm going to be with the right people. I was so wrong.
But at least there was no drinking in basic training or boot camp, right?
Right.
So you get there, vitamin D deficient and osteoporosis, but you're in, great physical shape. You played all kinds of sports.
Yeah, but I needed to say that because I ended up gaining 25 pounds in boot camp because my body just clung to everything that it could get. And so I walked out of there and my parents were like, wow. I looked so chubby. It all went to my face. And, I was a little embarrassed because I looked awful. They cut my hair super short. I hadn't worn makeup. And I was so pale because it was in the winter. It was October, so we weren't outside at all.
Right.
Yeah, I was just like, nobody looked at me. I was seeing a guy at the time, and he was from my hometown who also joined the Navy. He came out, and he tried to kiss me, and I was like, I just started laughing.
No.
I was like, don't touch me.
I'm hideous.
Yeah. He ended up breaking up with me later because I couldn't.
Right.
I was like, I don't want anyone to see me like this. And he probably thought I was like over him or something. I don't know.
Well, we're kind of laughing about it, but truthfully, those things are, that impacts you. Like when you don't like how you look or you don't.
Yes.
Right. And that's a huge impact on a person. And so I don't want to brush that off because, so many people, like, I don't know, I grew up the fat kid in junior high school. I get it. I can't imagine like being in total shape and then coming out of boot camp and never in my lifetime I've ever heard somebody coming out of boot camp worse than when they went in, right? People gained weight, but it was because they put on muscle or whatever, but your body was just trying to figure things out. So, that had to be rough. Like we laugh about it now, but that had to be a tough time for you.
It was. Psychologically, it really messed with me because I was prom queen. I was like I thought I was really pretty. I had pretty blonde hair. I always curled it. I was in good shape. And then I come out of boot camp and I'm like, I'm a monster.
It's 100% opposite of what you thought was going to happen.
Yeah, and I thought I would be. And again, I was the fastest person in my division, even the guys.
Yeah.
Nobody could beat me in running. I could still run great, but my body just just clung to everything.
Now, for those listening, because we only do audio, Jenna has fully recovered from boot camp.
Yes.
Great hair, great complexion. She looks great.
Thank you.
So we'll just put that out there. So you graduate, you don't kiss your boyfriend, you eventually break up, which, I don't know, most high school romances kind of go that way anyway, so no big surprise. So what happens after basic training?
I went down to Keesler Air Force Base. I got to go to an Air Force base.
Wow, lucky you.
Which is very rare for Navy. I think maybe the corpsmen go to an Air Force Base, and that's about it. And I was messaging my friends who went to Great Lakes, and they were sending me pictures of their barracks rooms, and I was like, look at mine. Mine looks like a hotel room. It's carpeted.
Right.
So it was nice, and they had a great dining facility. It was really nice when I first got there, but you feel awkward because everyone's looking at you, sizing you up. Navy, you know that someone's new by the length of their hair. So the longer their hair grows, the longer you know they've been in. So everyone's kind of just judging you a little bit, seeing how boot you are. Right.
Which is funny because I served in two different branches of the military, and the Navy really uses that term a lot, boot. Go sweep that up, boot, or go clean that up, boot, or whatever. Yeah. And so did you have any experiences like, when you first get out of basic training and you think, well, you probably didn't think, but like you think that, well, nobody can really tell, right? But you have this like one experience where you're out doing something and someone out in town or in the civilian world like calls you boot because they're in the military as well. Have you ever had one of those experiences like right after basic training?
Not on myself, but I definitely seen other people do that. And I felt like I was really self-aware, and I was also really self-conscious because of putting on the weight and how I looked. So I didn't want anything to bring attention to. I threw away my shoes, anything from boot camp, and went out and bought new stuff. I went and got my hair done. Like I wanted to look fresh
Right.
as I could. But yes, I saw a lot of people do that, and I was secondhand embarrassed for that.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's always that person that wears their shiny chloroform shoes with their civilian clothes because they don't have any other shoes, right?
Yes.
Do not be that person.
No, you do not want to be that person.
So you get to go to an Air Force base, which for anyone who's not served in the military, like the Air Force is the pinnacle of how they take care of people. The Navy does a great job. The Army depends. And the Marine Corps, I think they live in tents. So it's all good. But so you get to this base, you're noticing very quickly that there's like a hierarchy there and you're trying to fit in. How did that, so you talked about when you were younger, and an only child, you really tried to fit in with your friends because you didn't have any siblings. And so that was really important. How did that compare to going to this Air Force base right out of basic training, and trying to fit in there?
It carried over. I was definitely still a people pleaser. Our barracks were split, so there was a Marine side and then there was a Navy side, and so I was able to make friends within that, and then also friends with some of the Marine girls, and then the Marine guys were just on another level of girl crazy, and they were just like, anytime a new Navy girl walked in, they were just all over them.
Yeah.
And you could see that pattern, and I was just like trying not to be that person. Like I'm like, I know why they're talking to me and I don't want to. But I ended up getting a screenshot of two Marines talking about me really graphically, and they sent it to me, so I'm aware, but they didn't tell me who the person was. So I was kind of under the impression that all these Marines were like gross, and they were like talking about me like I was a process they needed to work on, and they wanted to get me in bed with them. And so I was just really like, that kind of alienated me because I didn't trust anyone. I was already insecure about my body, and then adding this on top of it. And I was a virgin when I graduated high school. Like I never had that sort of sexual attention from guys because I'm from a small town. Everyone I graduated with was like were brothers to me. They didn't see me like that at all.
Right. You just were friends.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which can lend itself to problems later on because not all guys are like that.
Yeah.
And I do want to ask, is that the screenshot that you shared on your social media?
Yes.
So I read that and I was just, it took me back because I went to basic training in San Diego, and then I went to my school in San Diego as well. And it was the same thing. We didn't have Marines. It was the same thing there, though. A new female, because there weren't a lot of female soldiers, and this is back in the 80s when I came in. And a new female sailor would show up, and these guys were just, it was awful. And it took me back to that and how I felt bad for the women who were in the military that showed up to that sort of harassment, mainly because it was like acceptable. It was acceptable to be that way. No one thought that was not the right thing to do. And I don't know, I'm not a woman. I don't know how that would have made me feel. But there are some people who come from small towns who aren't smart, who don't think about these things, and who end up in really bad situations because of that attention that they never got before. It doesn't sound like that's you. But that would have, just seeing that screenshot really would have upset me. So I can't even imagine how that made you feel. So that happens like shortly after you get there. So then what? So then, I finally start finding a group of friends and, started drinking again because that's how I knew how to make friends. So we would get hotel rooms and just party and, go to barracks rooms and all of that. And I ended up going to a barracks room, which I thought was a group of my friends. And I drank way too much. I said, all right, I need a place to sleep. I'm not going to be able to drive home. So one of my friends was like, hey, just go sleep in my bed. You'll be safe. I'll sleep on the floor. And I trusted him because we were friends. Right. And I started dating someone at the time, like my first real boyfriend. And my phone broke that night, right? So I was going to have him come pick me up, but he couldn't at the time. So I went to sleep and I woke up in the middle of the night with my friend on top of me, touching me, and I just started screaming and I left the room. I
I didn't know where to go. I was just kind of roaming. It wasn't my barracks room. It was on another base, so I didn't know where to go. And I just kind of, I left. I waited till morning till I was able to drive, and I drove back, and my phone was broke. So my friend, the one that assaulted me, called the quarterdeck because he wanted to get a hold of me. And he was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I was drinking. I would never do that if I was sober. And I believed him because that was my friend. And so I said, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I got, I just kind of held that inside me for a long time.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have reported. I really wish I would have, because he went on to actually assault one of my friends. Even though I warned everyone about him, they still hung out with him.
Well, so I'm going to ask a hard question for you. Do you feel, and you shouldn't, I don't think you should, but do you feel any sense of responsibility for what happened to your friend because you didn't turn him in?
Yes, I felt guilty when she came and told me. I felt awful, but now looking back, I look at all the reasons why I didn't report. All of the chain of command that I would have reported to were also taking advantage of younger sailors, women. Would they have believed me? It was really my word against his.
Right.
And like I said, I believed him when he said it was a one-time thing. Like, he did not mean to do that. I really did believe him. So yes, but now, I've really processed it. I've been to therapy about it.
Yeah. Well, and I try to be careful when I ask questions like that, just because I don't know if someone's been to therapy or not. But that had to be terrifying. I mean, you were a virgin when you graduated and came in the military, and which, by the way, when you, at least in my experience, when you talk about partying in high school, that's a different experience for me. That the people that we partied with, it wasn't small town. We weren't necessarily friends. A lot of us dated, and so that's a different scenario where alcohol really facilitated a lot of sexual activity that probably should have never happened, right? And everyone was consensual. No one got upset about it. But I think a lot of people regretted it later on, guys and girls alike. And so I can't imagine how terrifying this is to wake up thinking, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. And I grew up Catholic, so I was very religious. I always took that on as myself, even more than my parents did. And so I was saving myself for marriage. And then I also, like I mentioned, I had a boyfriend at the time, and I didn't want to tell him because I knew he would go. He was a Marine, and he would probably go and try to kill this person that did it to me.
Right.
So I just kept it in until, later I shared with my girlfriends, because our community is really small, weather community, and they're going to be stationed with him. I told them what had happened, and no one really took me seriously, which hurt today. It still hurts today that nobody took it seriously, and it made me feel like I shouldn't take it seriously. So I never thought that was an issue until, later on in my life, it affected me a lot.
Well, there's this culture of victim blaming. That while I think it's gotten better in the military, I think it's probably not gone. No. I mean, you see it in society as well. Oh, you shouldn't have been at that party. You shouldn't have been drinking. You shouldn't have been wearing whatever you were wearing. Right. None of those things gives anybody the right to do something that you don't want them to do. Clearly. So how did that impact your relationship with your boyfriend, that this happened, but you didn't tell him, but you knew it happened?
Let's take a quick break.
Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on donations from our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and would like to support our continued efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the donate button. Thank you.
Yes, it just kind of, I was already awkward. And it just kind of made me more awkward, but it also made me drink more to be less awkward around him and around my friends. And like any military relationship, I ended up getting stationed in Norfolk, and he was still in Mississippi. So we had a long distance relationship for the majority of the 2 years we dated. So it was, kind of me being emotionally unavailable, but also, you know, we were 19, 20. He was also very immature, and he was someone that went through a lot as a young man.
Right.
Yeah.
So you end up in Norfolk then, after your schooling, and what was that like? When were you in Norfolk? What years were you there?
I got there in 2014, and I was there until I got out of the Navy in 2017.
So that's funny, because you were in Norfolk exactly 30 years after I was in Norfolk.
Wow.
I was there in 87 through almost 90.
Okay. And you were on a carrier as well.
Actually, no. I was on a destroyer.
Oh, that's right. You were there when the new carrier came out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We actually did the trials for the, was it the Ronald Reagan or one of the newer carriers, which probably wasn't even a newer carrier it was probably an old carrier when you got there. But
Yeah.
So you get to Norfolk, and you were on a carrier. So what was that like for you arriving at Norfolk? I mean, I remember what it was like for me to first get there, and that place is amazing and terrifying all at the same time, I think. So what was it like for you?
One of the cool things about being an AG is that we're not stationed on ships. So we're actually we're sea duty, but we get to go, ships will call a team and say, hey, we need weather people on this team. So you get to go to a bunch of different ships. So at first I got to do training. I was on the TR, the Teddy Roosevelt. So I got to go underway with them. And then the next time they needed someone, I got to go underway with an LHD, which was pretty cool. And that was the Wasp? The Wasp is the oldest ship. And when I went underway on there, it actually just went dead in the water.
So the Wasp was not an old ship when I was there. I remember that ship.
I swear it's the first, it's LHD 1.
Yeah.
The first one.
Yeah. I was on a Vietnam era steam propelled destroyer. One of the last ones in the fleet. So when you say it went dead in the water, I remember doing underway replenishment and going dead in the water and tearing the hoses and everything off the wall. It was crazy. But this isn't about me. This is about you. So you go on the Wasp. You're really making me feel old, but it's one of the oldest ships now. And yeah. So what was it like the first time getting haze green underway?
It was intimidating because the first time was on a carrier. Again, I don't know anyone on the ship because I'm not ship's company. And I get thrown in a random berthing, and you get territorial about your berthings. If someone's coming in, you're going to want to know why they're there, and you're not going to be nice to them. I mean, I was guilty of it too. Just like, well, okay, I wasn't guilty of that, but you're just like, what are they doing? Like, we don't have room for more people. So I didn't really talk to anyone, but luckily I was with one of my friends from my command. They sent 2 girls for that reason, you know, so we would feel comfortable. And it was just cool. And it was fun to hang out in the office. And for weather, we're on the 06. No. Yeah, we're on the 06. So we're on the island. Right. You have a window. You can see outside. And every hour you have to go outside and take a weather observation. So you just really get to watch all of the aircrafts, and it was really cool. I was like, wow, you know, like this is why I joined the Navy, to be out here and do this.
Well, and when you talk about berthing areas too, so what a lot of people I don't think know is that when they build ships, the berthing areas are kind of like an afterthought. We just need a place to stack people so they can sleep. So it's not like a luxury apartment by any means. It's like prison. At least that's what I remember it being. But how cool to be out there doing what you're doing. And then because you were like a detachment, they didn't really task you or mess with you guys then, did they? I mean, you just did your thing.
So later on, when I went on deployment, I was on the Truman, assigned there. We were really integrated into the ship. Okay. And my chief was someone that made a point of that. Like, we're going to be on here. We want to be like ship's company. So that was really cool because I got to be a part of a repair locker, which is where you go it's not battle stations. When they have the emergency alarm.
Yeah, what do we call that?
I was just talking about it the other day.
General quarters.
General quarters.
Yes, the general quarters alarm. Thank you.
Yes. So general quarters, I was at a repair locker and I got to be on the fire team. So we would have to get out of our racks or wherever we were and go down and don the whole, those Janesville suits and put on SCBA with the helmet. And I was the #1 nozzleman, and the team leader is now my best friend. Her name's Angela Martinez. And that's how we bonded.
So when I was in, we had OBAs. Did they ever talk about those?
No.
So OBA, oxygen breathing apparatus, and it was basically like this harness that you put on, and there was this canister that you would put up inside of it, and it would generate oxygen so you could breathe.
Okay.
Yeah. There was two things. One, if you put it in backwards and activated it, it would catch on fire and blow up. But it generated a lot of heat when it created oxygen.
Okay.
So it's interesting to see that we've kind of evolved from that. Now, I got to be honest, like I think you're probably the only person who like smiles and genuinely looks happy that they were on one of these teams, because usually this is an extra duty that people just don't even really want to mess with. But you, I mean, I wish people could see your face, because you're like all lit up about I was doing it. Like, we were doing damage control, we were firefighting, and it's so important on a ship, because that ship catches on fire, that's your home, and you're in the middle of the ocean.
Yep. They say every Marine's a rifleman, but every sailor is a firefighter. We are trained.
Yes.
And I got to we never had a fire, but, I got to do those scenarios where I would have been #1 nozzleman right by the fire if it was going to happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And did they still have the, so I'm going to age myself again, but so when we did that, you had the nozzleman, you had people holding the hoses, and then you also had like this big long pipe that went out, and then it would like spray water in front of the nozzleman to keep the heat off them.
I can't remember that
not
position.
that it's even important, but that's what we used to have.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because it was supposed to, like when you did the simulation in boot camp, it's really hot right there. So yeah, that probably needed, but I don't know where the other water would come from.
I don't know. So when you went to boot camp, I don't mean to jump around, but this reminds me. So when you went to boot camp, did they have the smokehouse still?
Maybe.
So the smokehouse in boot camp it's this room. It looks like a mock-up of a ship's room, and they dump diesel fuel on wood, and they just fill this thing up with smoke. And then you have to go in and put on your breathing apparatus and practice all of that.
Yes, I remember that. And that was the time where a lot of people started falling asleep because it was so dark and you're up so late. It's like the middle of the night. Yeah, I remember that.
Lots of things in the military happen in the middle of the night, by the way.
Yes.
I think you arrive at boot camp in the middle of the night usually, and then anytime they want to mess with you, it's the middle of the night.
Yep. What is that? Man overboard drills, always in the middle of the night.
Yeah. So do you have a greater appreciation for like a good night's sleep?
I do. I practice great sleep hygiene now. I never want to be on that because I worked nights a lot on the ship, and my chief was like, "I need to hide you. You're too social, and you're talking to everyone during the day." And then I would have weirdos that would come up to the office and like try to talk to me and that. So like they started putting me on nights for like, "We're gonna hide you." But I liked nights because it was slower pace and you could just hang out. But the meal was horrible. Mid-rats.
Oh my God.
It was always horrible in the middle of the night. So I became friends with a lot of culinary specialists, the cooks, and they would hook me up.
There are certain people you want to be friends with. I remember one night Mid-rats was a piece of toast with peanut butter or jelly. Like we had on a destroyer, you run out of food all the time, and so it was pretty awful. I remember those days. And there's nothing like being outside on a ship at like 2:00 in the morning when the moon is out. Mm-hmm. Like I'll even watch a movie now and see that, and it brings me right back to what that feels like.
Yeah.
So do you kind of miss, like, there's some things that I miss about the Navy. That's one of them.
I swear that's the only reason I would go on a cruise now, is to just go out there at night and to see all the stars and the quietness, or maybe just the hum of the ship. and there'd always be someone on watch too.
Right.
One of the boatswain's mates. So we would talk, and those conversations are some of the best I've ever had because you can't see them. So especially when it's pitch black, you just see the stars, and you feel like you could open up to anyone. And I think that's where some of my passion started for interviewing people, is just probably interviewing boatswain's mates and hearing some crazy stories.
Oh yeah. Well, did you find that you like had this quieter voice when you were having those conversations?
Yeah.
Like to me, those conversations were always like, I don't know, like NPR conversations.
Yeah. Very, very quiet, very just in confidence. You know, you knew that they wouldn't tell anyone, or if they did, who were they going to tell? You know, it was just such an open dialogue. It was nice.
Yeah. And that's kind of cool that gave you your passion for interviewing and talking to people. There's some value in listening. And I don't know that we do enough of that today.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think we give ourselves the space for it because there's so many distractions, you know?
Yeah. My grandmother used to say, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Right.
So listen to people and then to talk. So is there anything like when you were in the fleet and doing that, is there anything that really sticks out in your mind that you'd like to share with people now? Like, is there one memory that you have that's like this memory, good or bad, that just sticks with you now that maybe shaped who you are today?
Oh, I'm trying to think. So I would have, I think I really found my passion for public policy, which is what I went for, but really like foreign affairs and just learning, my passion for learning, I'll say that, and learning about the world and different cultures, because I signed up for as many subscriptions as I could before I went on deployment. And so I had like Time magazine. I would read every single article and I would just learn so much. And then I also had access to SIPRNet, which is secret internet. And I would just be reading all the articles, anything that was going on in the world. And then I was able to talk to people from so many different backgrounds, some people that weren't even from the U.S., they joined to become citizens, and just learning how they grew up. And I just became so fascinated with really people and situations around the globe.
Yeah, I can see that. And, I had a question around the tip of my tongue too. I know what I wanted to ask you is that, so we talked about you visited your uncle in Florida, and what stuck in your mind was join the Navy, see the world. So you really got to do that. Like, it wasn't just a slogan, you actually did it.
Yes, I did. And on that deployment, we went to Croatia and I went on the tours, and you get a cultural brief before you go into every country, so you know how to act. And one of the things they told us was, don't ask about Yugoslavia, like the former Yugoslavia. Don't ask about that stuff. And I went and asked the tour guide about it.
Yeah, who are you not to, right?
Right. And, she kind of brought it up because she was saying these apartments are all vacant. She was showing us around the town. We were on a bus tour, which we could drink on. So that got my tongue a little loose too. Yes. And I could tell there was a little angst there. So I was like, so why are they vacant now? And she's like, well, when we were under Yugoslavia, they had apartments that were for free for everyone. And so everyone was able to live in them. And now that Croatia government, you could just sense that tension and that change. And even though it was probably 20 years ago since that happened, you could just see the aftermath. And I was like, that's so interesting.
Yeah, people don't forget, especially those sorts of situations.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about this too. So you're drinking on the bus and asking questions you were told not to. At what point did you say, I'm not drinking anymore?
Oh.
Because we've kind of talked around it, and I don't know if I'm jumping way ahead or not, but what happened that you said, I'm not going to drink anymore?
Honestly, I'm 80 days sober today without alcohol.
Congratulations.
So it's pretty new, and I'm still kind of figuring it out. I haven't really came out about it, but to anyone besides my husband and a few close friends. And really, it's just, I'm kind of looking at it different, what benefit is it? But it was kind of just, there wasn't one big moment. It was just I think to get to the next level of where I want to be in life, I need to let that go.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yep. Some people have a big epiphany, and for others, it's just a lot of small things that stack up that go,
Yep.
I don't need to do this anymore. I mean, I don't drink. But yeah, there was no culminating event that said you're not going to drink anymore. Other than I think you promised God so many times while you're throwing up
I'll
that
never drink again.
Yeah, if he doesn't kill you this time, you'll never touch another drop until the next time. And so I think at some point he takes you up on that, and I didn't want to test him.
Yeah, definitely. It was just kind of, and also a health thing, really.
Right.
I've cut out a lot of things from my diet, and alcohol was always the excuse, that's good for you to have a glass of wine or something. We tell ourselves that, and then really looking at it and learning more about it, I'm like, no, it's not. You don't need it.
No, and I have found that, a lot of social events, a lot of things that you do when you're here in D.C. revolve around drinking. Mm-hmm. But you know what? No one cares that I don't drink. Like, that's not even a problem.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be.
You think you're going to stick out, but really, no one cares.
I get a cranberry and club soda with a lime on it.
No one knows the difference.
No. And when people ask me what I'm drinking, that's what I'm drinking. If you want to buy me one, great. It'll cost you nothing because I'm your designated driver. So they'll give it to you for free. But I always had that fear that somehow that would interrupt my social life.
Yes. Oh, I had the same fear. Mm-hmm. And also, maybe you feel like this too, it was a confidence thing for me. Like, I'm not good enough unless I'm a little loose. And then so many things I realized that I do while I'm drinking, I still do sober. Like, I would get embarrassed for oversharing. And then I realized, you still overshare. You just like to talk a lot.
Which is good if you're an interviewer, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I want to jump back to the Navy. So if you notice, I do jump around a lot, but I like to kind of figure out where things landed. So you, it sounds like you had a great time in the fleet. Now, did you do a shore rotation, or did you get out, or how did all that work for you?
Nope. So that deployment was really my contemplation. It was the year before I got out. So I kept going back and forth. And, you have chief and first class in your ear saying, do it, the Navy needs you. And then, you're just like, I'm not passionate about weather. I found my passion on deployment. I love learning about people and cultures, and I want to study politics. And so I just kept going back and forth. And so that summer, or the last stop on deployment, we went to Greece. And it was one of my friend's birthdays, and we were at a villa, and we had a party for her, and it was really loud inside, and I was like, I just need a breather. So I went outside, and there was this guy by himself playing music on an old iPod, and I was like, oh, could I pick a song? Just making small talk, and I started going through his iPod, and he had really good music, like oldies, and I was like, wow, these are
I want to stop you for a minute. What do you consider an oldie? We'll finish the story because I love it, but I want to know what you consider an oldie right now.
Right. So like I mentioned, my parents are 40 years older. Right. They didn't play anything past 85. Like, my dad would not listen to anything new. So anything from the 60s, 70s, I grew up listening to CCR, the Beatles, the Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, Pink Floyd, like all that was... Yeah. Okay,
we can continue the conversation then.
So I was going through, I was like, you have amazing music. Like, I would marry you right now. I literally said that to him. Again, I was probably having a few drinks, and we started talking and then next thing we know, everyone inside's calling us and saying, the cabs are here, we're going to go to the clubs. So we went to the clubs. And we were dancing, he was dancing with me and my friend, we were all sweaty, so we're like, let's go outside, let's go to a quieter bar. Went downstairs to another bar, and we walk in, it was me and my friend, and we were wearing matching outfits.
Oh, no.
Like, we had these big skirts on, but different colors, and, like tank tops, we were looking cute, tan skin, and we walk in, and, he's got both of us, and there's a British football team at the bar, like, all lined up, and they start whistling at us girls. And... my now husband was not going to handle that. And he said, you don't whistle at women. You respect them. Bam. They knocked him out.
Oh, no.
They all jumped on him.
Oh, poor guy.
He had 2 black eyes, a bloody lip, and we went outside to get help, and we were just calling anyone, other sailors were like, come help, and they broke up the fight, pulled him out. I just remember him being on the street looking like this. He said, let me go, I'm going after him. And they said, no, we got to hide you because in the Navy, there's shore patrol, and there's people dressed in civilian attire that are out looking for people that are fighting, and they will bring you back to the ship, and you will get captain's mast. So they were like, no, we got to hide you. So they took him back to their hotel or wherever they were staying, and I never saw him again.
Oh, my gosh. He took a beating for you, and then you didn't see him again.
He claims, because we had about a month left, so we went back on the ship, he claims that I looked right at him on the mess decks while everyone was eating. He said I looked right at him and just kept walking. And he said he felt like he looked that pathetic still that I wouldn't talk to him.
Oh, no. Kind of how you felt after basic training, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so we got home in July. You know, I knew of him, you know, like I knew some of his friends, but in January, so like almost 7 months later, I'm at a going away party, and it happens to be at his house. He lived with 5 guys, and he was there, of course, and we met back up, and we've been together ever since.
That's a great story.
Right?
That's a great story. You could probably edit that and tell your kids a little bit about it, right?
Yes, yeah. I don't think I've ever told the kids how we met, and yeah, and it was good timing, I think, because during that time, he was actually going through a divorce. He had married his high school sweetheart, and maybe you'll talk about this if you interview him, but he's got that whole story. And so during those 7 months, you know, he kind of worked everything out and figured things out. So it was meant to be. God knew that we weren't meant to be right then and there.
Right.
You know, he had to go through his whole thing, and then, yeah. He was ready.
Yeah, I love you've got great music. I would marry you right now.
Yes, I told him.
That's pretty awesome.
The day I met him, I would marry him. And I did.
Well, he held you to your promise.
Yeah, really.
So what did your husband do? And is he still in the Navy, or he's gotten out since?
Yep, he got out. I made him get out because I'm like, I'm not going to, if you're going back on a ship, I'm not going to be here with kids by myself. I know, I've seen so many spouses do that, and I was like, I'm not going to live that life, so you're getting out. And he was ordnance. He was an AO, and he ended up getting out and finding a job that needed that skill set right away, which worked out good.
Oh, that's great. And you guys ended up in Maryland, right?
Yes, yeah. So that's another reason.
How do we get there?
That's how. So as you know, I started dating him in January. We were, you know, inseparable, and I took him back to Wisconsin one week. We both had 2 weeks off. And, you know, he met my family and everything. We stopped at my aunt's house, my Aunt Cassie's house, how I know you through.
Yes.
And so he met, we did a tour of, you know, we went to Chicago, saw my godmother, went to Milwaukee, saw some of my cousins, went up to the UP, saw my parents, came back down through my Aunt Cassie's house. Like, he got the tour of, like, my family, and everyone was like, they loved him, and he loved everyone. So I was just like, yeah, it feels right. And we ended up moving in that next summer. You know, once I got out, I moved up to Maryland with him. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny you call her Aunt Cassie, because I always just know her as Kathy.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'm going to start calling her that when I see her now.
It's funny because, yeah, like my dad, all her siblings call her Cassie, but her husband and, you know, professionally, she's Kathy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I worked with her for quite a while.
Yes, yeah, and I never knew people called her Kathy.
Yeah, she's always just been Kathy to me. That's funny. Yeah. But now I know, I get a little inside information that I won't share with anybody, but when I talk to her, I'll call her Cassie for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
So you move in together, you're in Maryland, and when did you get married?
So when I got out, I was really struggling, you know, because he was still in, and I really had an identity crisis. And on top of that, what was it, like 4 weeks after I got out, I started going to college right away. And then 4 weeks, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh.
So, you know, I was going through this identity crisis of not being in the military. I'm now pregnant, which, coming from a Catholic family, I'm not married. Right. I was super embarrassed about that. And now I never had to be. Nobody made me feel that way. It was really self-inflicted. And now I couldn't drink, which was my way of making friends. So I just isolated. And I know a lot of veterans do that. I shut down all my social medias. I didn't talk to anyone. I really just focused on school for about a year until my daughter was born. But yeah, it was a really dark time.
Oh yeah. Well, for people who never served in the military, and you can't paint everybody with a broad brush, but for a lot of veterans, you don't realize how much of your identity is wrapped up in your time in the military, whether it's 2 years or 10 years or, in my case, 21 years, until you're done. And then, it's like, who am I? Like, I put this uniform on every day. I knew where to go every day. If I got married, I got more money. I mean, it's all these things that the military does. And then when you leave, you're done. Like, there's no easing into it. And then I grew up in a Catholic family, so I get Catholic guilt as well.
Oh, yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah. So you have all that stuff going on. I mean, how in the world did you survive a year of just not, because you're a social person, I can tell. Well, how did you do that? I mean, you say it's dark, but my gosh.
I know, and I don't remember a lot of that year. I really was focusing on being healthy with my pregnancy, so I really invested things in my health and just school. I really studied, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was good at something, like good at school. Like, I understand this, and I'm putting everything. So I really just was in the gym and school, and And then when my daughter was born, she was very colicky. She was a very tough baby. So I really had postpartum depression, and that it just made everything worse.
So you were really talking like 2 years of almost like a nightmare life for you.
Yes. Yeah, it was really hard. And, I'm in Maryland. My family's in Wisconsin. His family's in New Jersey. We were in a really small house. No one could stay with us. Well, my mom would come stay and sleep in my stepdaughter's tiny little bed.
Right.
Or she'd sleep on the couch. So I just needed a break because I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't sleep because I was like, she's going to wake up in an hour. Why should I go to sleep? So I wasn't sleeping. And then when college started, she was born in June, and then college started in August. And so I had like that little break, but then, I was throwing myself back in school, and it was really exhausting.
Well, not sleeping will make you crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's not the right word to use, but it will definitely mess with you.
Yeah, and that's why I just value sleep so much now.
Yes, I can imagine. So what did you study in school?
I studied public policy. So it's a mix of economics and political science. And in that, I loved it so much. So during that first year back in school with my daughter now, I found a program. It was called the Washington Program. And I could go do an internship on Capitol Hill. I was like, I want to do that. Something, that was my little light in all the darkness. And I was I'm going to apply. And I applied the night before the applications were due. And, they accepted everyone except for me. They had to do an interview with me before they accepted me, which I thought was weird. But when I talked to them, and I ended up getting it. And so I just needed to figure out where I wanted to be. So I was talking to the professor, and he's like, so what are you passionate about? Like, what would you want to make a difference in on the Hill? And I was like, I don't know, I'm not Republican, I'm not Democrat, I don't really care about that stuff. I'm just like this. And he's like, well, you're a veteran, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, why don't you try to go work for a veteran senator or congressman or woman? I was like, oh, I didn't even know the options. I don't think I even knew the structure of the difference between Senate and Congress at the time. I was just like, I want to go to Capitol Hill.
It just sounds cool.
Yeah. So I started applying, and I ended up getting a internship at the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. And that was through the summer. That was really rough on my family because I would leave at 6:30, drop off my daughter at daycare, and then catch the commuter bus at 7:55 to be at work up here at 9. And I wouldn't get home till 8 o'clock. So my husband was having to pick up from daycare, make dinner, do bath, bedtime, put a lot of pressure on him. And that's when I realized I can't work up here. But I learned so much through that internship.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what a great way to learn about all those things that you didn't know about.
Yeah, I know how it's structured now.
Like, you totally get it when you're watching the news. You're like, oh, I know what's going on here.
Yep, I found out that the committee was just not a round table that everyone got together and talked about ideas. No. But that's what I had pictured in my mind. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have a chance to talk to them and tell them how I feel as a veteran, especially in school. They're going to listen to me.
No, that's really not how it works, right? So you have 2 children then?
Yes.
So how old's your stepdaughter?
She's 9. She just turned 9. And then I have a daughter who's 5 and then another daughter who's 2.
Okay. It's a busy house.
Yes.
And they're spaced out just enough that you'll have kids that are all teenagers at the same time at some point, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I was like, we might have a break between when they're in college to pay for college.
Right.
But yeah, so they're all 3.5 years apart.
Yeah. So what's a typical day in your household right now?
Wake up, get them ready for school. My husband is such a big help. He packs the lunches. He has their coats out. He has their little shoes at the door. He's amazing because he gets up super early and will either go to the gym or he'll work out in the basement and, get them to school. It's just such a rush. Even this morning, I kept forgetting things. I got up early so I could, usually I'm just wearing sweats to drop off.
Right.
And, get home. For me, I work from home, so it's pretty flexible for me to do a lot of my veteran stuff and also, get my work done. I'm a Navy civilian. And, go pick the kids up and come home. My husband always cooks. I do dishes or bath time. Yeah,
it's all team.
Yes,
right?
It is.
That's the only way it works, especially with 3 kids.
Yes. And we don't have my stepdaughter all the time, but when we do have her, she's actually a huge help because she wrangles them up. She's a little mom herself, and I love when she's there because she's great with them, and she teaches them so many things.
Well, and that's great to hear that everyone's kind of integrated, that it's not it's not a hassle or a headache, because a lot of times in blended families that becomes an issue with stepchildren and children of the marriage and all this. But it doesn't sound like that's even a problem at your house.
My husband knows that firsthand because he's a step sibling, he's a half sibling, so he knows all of that, and he just makes sure that won't happen with Blake.
Well, good.
Yes.
Good. So just kind of thinking about all that you've been through and all that you've done. I want to talk a little bit about what you do for veterans. So I know that you have Vet Chat podcast. I know that you produce a workbook, and you're a great veterans advocate. Can we talk a little bit about how that started and what you're doing with that?
Yeah. So after I did that internship, COVID hit and I was out of college looking for jobs, and I was really inspired through that internship to reach out to younger veterans because we're not represented at all in Congress, especially, anyone under 35. And those are the most vulnerable because 18 to 35 has the highest suicide rate for veterans. They're the most vulnerable. They need help. We need to bring them into that community. And if their experience was anything like mine, I'm a woman. I only did 4 years. I didn't feel like I was a veteran. So I just wanted to start having those conversations and bringing people into the amazing veteran community and all the resources we have. We can talk about benefits, anything. So I just made a Facebook group and started adding my friends, and then they added their friends, and people would join and share what they're up to. And I started asking people if they would want to go live with me on Instagram and just talk about it and kind of showcase the great stuff they're doing.
Yeah. And so, how many followers on your Facebook page now, or do you not even?
The Facebook group, it's a closed group, so we have about 2,000.
Okay.
And most of my traction is through Instagram, where I'm now at 30,000 followers, which is crazy.
So at 30,000 followers, right? You can put links in your description, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Which is very helpful.
You can have links. I get people from all over reaching out. A lot of people that are still in, and they're worried about the transition out. And I'm just sharing, real stuff. It is going to be hard. You're going to go through this, and this is all when I realized everything we go through, I went through it. I watched my husband go through it, and I was like, wow, it's really not a me thing. We all kind of go through it.
Yeah.
So I just started writing down particular things such as identity crisis, kind of unnumbing, needing to reflect on your service, things like that. And I just put it all together in a journal style workbook.
Yes. So a couple of things. If someone wants to find you on Facebook or Instagram, how are they going to do that?
At The Millennial Veteran, and millennial has 2 L's and 2 N's because I misspell it all the time.
Thank you, because thank God for word spell check.
Yes, yeah. So at The Millennial Veteran on Instagram is the best place, and I have a link in my bio, and you can find the podcast, you can find the workbook link, and all other sorts of resources, the Facebook group.
And I really recommend folks who, if you are a veteran or you know a veteran or you work with veterans, check out the workbook, go to the Instagram, go to the Facebook page, check all of those things out, because that's it's a great resource. Maybe if it's not for you, it could be for somebody that you know. You know, the other thing is you talked about veterans not knowing they're veterans. And having been a veterans program manager for a major corporation, there are so many veterans who don't realize that. And one of the things that we started doing was changing our language, right? I asked people if they served, right? Because if you served, you're a veteran. But there's this kind of stigma, well, I wasn't in combat, or I didn't retire, or I only spent a couple of years, I'm not really a veteran. Well, yes, you are. And we respect that. But sometimes we have to ask, did you serve? And we'll get this whole other group of people who we didn't know existed that will come forward and say, yeah, I served. And then you can talk about the veterans. I don't know if you've tried any of that, but... Yeah, that's so true, especially women veterans, because we're so... I'm cautious about sharing. I'm a proud veteran myself, but when you share it with groups of people, sometimes you always get the look down. Yeah.
I always do. And no matter who asks me, and they're always surprised, and then I get the look me over.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I served with Mary Schwartz. She was one of my soldiers when I deployed to Iraq. And Mary is not very tall, and she's just a very petite person. But she was a saw gunner. Like, she carried this big machine gun around. Wow. And she was, for lack of a better way to say it, she was just badass. And when we got back, I didn't see her again until just a couple of years ago. So we didn't see her for like 15 years. But she's a school teacher in Missouri. And a lot of her students don't know that she was in the military. But every once in a while, she'll bring in pictures. She runs the ROTC program there. But they get this whole different view of her because she's quiet. She's super nice. Like you would never know that she'd served in combat. But she had. And so I think a lot of women, there's like a stigma out there. Like I know that I have watched this happen, that there will be a married couple and the husband's never served in the military in his life. And the wife is the veteran. And when they're at a veterans event, people immediately go to the man. And they will ignore the wife, right? So I see that over and over again, which should change at some point, because there's a lot more women serving in the military now.
Yes. Yeah. And there's going to be a lot more women veterans that are coming up too. So.
And you women out there who have served, you are veterans, own that, Yeah. Take charge of that. And so what if people give you the once over?
I know. I laugh at it now, but at first I was like, what did they think I did? Especially when I walked into the first day of my liberal arts college and said, yeah, I just got out of the Navy. And I swear everyone looked at me like I had just waved a Trump flag or something.
You had a third eye, a second head,
yes.
All of those things, right? Well, this has been great talking with you and getting to know you. And I know that folks listening to this now and in the future will get something from our conversation. I hope the veterans do reach out to you, or veterans advocates reach out to you, because I think you can really be helpful to them. Before we go, though, I ask everyone this question, and I preface it with, 100 years from now, when I'm not here and possibly you're not here, and someone gets this story and listens to it, what would you like them to take away?
I would like them to really view my story, especially when we talked about the sexual harassment and assault. I hope they view that as so outdated and such a thing of the past, that would be the best circumstance. But I hope they take away that, you're going to learn so many good things in the military, so many lessons, and you're going to also have some hardships. And it's okay to have mixed feelings about your service. You can appreciate the great things you learn, but also want to change the bad things that happen.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Veterans Archives, the podcast that brings you the story of the men and women who have created and lived our military history. If you or someone you know served in the military and would like to share your story with Veterans Archives, please go to www.veteransarchives.org, select the Apply Now button, and fill out our application, and someone will get right back with you. Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on the donations of our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and you support our efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the Donate button. Any donation is certainly appreciated. Look for Veterans Archives on your favorite social media. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look for Veterans Archives. Like, follow, and share our page. We'd certainly appreciate it. If you or someone you know is a veteran and you are struggling with mental health issues, please dial 988 and select option 1 for the Veterans Crisis Hotline. Please be sure to tune in next time for the next episode of Veterans Archives.